start our live Facebook group. I forgot to do this real quick so I can keep my eye on the time. Okay, let me do that real quick. Okay, so for anyone that's
all the technology.
I know. So we are now live streaming into the Facebook group. So if anyone is now watching, we're getting ready to go live on Voice America in about 30 seconds. So I'm going to take a deep breath in. Oh, and Susan, I forgot to mention, I'll just start with a little drop in at the very beginning before I introduce.
I listened to one of your shows, so I'm hip to the jive.
Okay, you're hip and jive. They're so cool.
All right. Yeah, we've got about 30 seconds. So when you guys hear the music, you guys are live. So have a great show, you guys.
Thank you, Gabe.
Do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Over the next hour, you will hear raw, honest, and inspiring conversation between Lynsie and her guests, discussing how to thrive, live joyfully, and abundantly in spite of life's challenges. Now, here is your host, Lynsie McKeown.
Hello, and welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically on Voice America's Empowerment Channel. I am your host, Lynsie McKeown, and I am extremely excited today about our guest on today's episode, The Truth About Body-Life Balance. But before I bring on this amazing woman, let's take a moment to connect. And the best way that we can do that is through stopping whatever we're doing in this moment, to stop, take a pause, and take a deep breath. So wherever you are, you can stand, you can sit, you can have your eyes open, or you can have them closed. But just take this moment to connect to the inhale and the exhale as it moves in and out through your nose. And let's come into a balanced breath. And what that means is when you breathe in, find a count that feels nurturing and supportive for you, and then match that count for the exhale. So for example, breathe in for 5 and breathe out for 5. And allow the breath to come into this smooth, steady rhythm that will support you in feeling more steady, more grounded, and sensing how the body can relax and the mind can quiet as you find steadiness in the breath. And we'll just take one more round, breathing in for 5 and out for 5. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes, you can make your way back and just notice how you feel. I feel better. So let's go ahead and invite in our guest, Susan McCulley. I am excited to have her here today. I met Susan back in 2018 when I was preparing for my TEDx talk, and I actually hired Susan to help me and coach me in creating something that I can say that I'm very proud of to this day. She was absolutely amazing in her support. And Susan is also a mindful movement teacher, a coach, an artist, and a writer since 2000. And she is the creator of the Age of Becoming Embodied Practices Empowering Women Over 50 community, which offers free movement practices and workshops, connection and community, and more. And I'm actually a member of this group, and it's awesome. She's always posting such great content and always providing so many free offerings that are just rich and a wealth of knowledge. And she's also a Nia Black Belt Instructor. She particularly loves teaching embodied awareness to people of all abilities and experiences in all groups of all sizes. She is passionate about supporting people as they connect with inherent wisdom of the body and take their practice into life. She has illustrated 2 books, Buddha Cat, Learning Awareness, Presence, and Self-Care from a Teacher Who Sometimes Barfs on the Bed. I love that title. And Octabusy, Letting Go in a Sea of Doing. She has a new online course, Building Balance in Your Body and Life, which I hope we get a chance to talk about today. And you can find all of this on her website, her teaching schedule, her classes, her books, her art at susanmcculley.com. So welcome, Susan. So glad you're here today.
Hey, Lynsie. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you were one of the first people I actually wanted to have on this show. I mean, you were actually the first person I talked to, and just because of timing and all, you ended up being the fourth guest, but I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. Yes, I know. I'm so excited about this show in general and delighted to be here.
Well, let's go ahead and dive in because I know how we are, and we could use probably 3 hours to talk, and we only have one. So let's dive into, the topic of the show is the truth about work, life, body balance. And so let's just start by talking about what balance is and what balance is not, or maybe what it isn't first, and then we'll talk about what it is.
Yeah, let's start with what it isn't. Because I think that one of the big misconceptions about balance is that it is a destination. Whether you were talking about taking a yoga pose in balance, or being able to balance on a balance beam or something like that, or work-life balance, creating balance in our world, in our life, I think that there's such a misunderstanding that it is a noun. And I think that our culture sets balance up as this ideal, this perfect life and body that is symmetrical and perfectly aligned and effortless, and social media plays right into this, right? You go take a look on Instagram and you see all these pictures of people in perfect bodies doing perfect things, and it feels completely unattainable. And I think that one of the things that I really encourage is for people to think about balance as something we do, not someplace we get. It's not something we achieve or a place that we land, but rather a process. It is an ongoing, forever changing, dynamic thing that we do, right? Yeah.
I love that because we are a society that puts a lot of value on achieving and getting an end result to prove that everything that we've done has been worthwhile and therefore we are worthy. And I like this idea that it's a process. And with that, there seems to be like more space and freedom to relax around that, and just more of that idea of, being in the process and just really enjoying it.
Right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that culturally we tend to go very black and white. We go binary, right? We're either balanced or we're not balanced. And I would actually argue that balance is fluid. It's like water. And very much, I love how you say that it true balance requires relaxation, requires a sense of calm and ease that is not uncomfortable with discomfort, to be honest, right? And awkwardness or messiness.
Yes.
I
just want to I always hate interrupting, but I just want to really bring that point in, that balance is messy. But the first thing that you said about how it's not rigid, it's fluid, and it requires rest. Balance requires rest. Ladies, are you listening to this? Balance requires rest. And so I think that's so important, because in this need to achieve and get somewhere, we're not resting because we feel like we need to do more.
Right.
I love that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. And I think one of the ways that I teach pretty much everything is starting with the body, the physical experience in the body, and then take that sensation centered experience and expand it into anything else that we want to do. And so, I'm gonna invite our listeners, if you can, to right now stand up and play with balancing on one foot. Now, this might mean holding onto a chair or just lifting a heel up. If you're driving, just do
Don't.
this later.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yes, but if you're seated and you can't stand up, like if you have a microphone on and you can't stand up like I am, you can just do this in your chair by lifting 1 foot or 2 feet and just notice what your body does. Your body, when it is balancing, is engaging and releasing. It's squeezing and letting go. And it's this constant shifting back and forth, in and out of that is what the sensation of balance is. And even if we look at a prima ballerina who it seems like she can on point to be able to stay like rock solid. It's not true. It's an illusion. She is also engaging and releasing,
Yes.
engaging and releasing.
It's an illusion.
And so the practice of balance is getting comfortable with that dynamic. And in order to, it's sort of the paradox of balance is that in order to get more balanced, you take yourself out of balance, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so this can sound really counterintuitive, but when I am teaching about physical balance, what I am always inviting people to do is find where their balance is right now and just play with stretching it a little bit, right? So if you're standing on 1 foot and that feels like easy peasy double cheesy, then play with closing one eye, play with looking around, play with swinging your legs, swinging your arms,
Yeah.
and what this does is it emphasizes the messiness of balance, that in order to really be practicing balance, it's going to be wobbly, bobbly, messy.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's an illusion that we can maintain perfect balance. If you look down at your foot when you're balancing on 1 foot, you can see the ankle kind of
Yes.
rocking back and forth and the muscles firing and the toes gripping. And so it's always in flux and it's always moving. And I love that idea that, again, back to the messiness. And then if you feel like, and you've gotten like, oh, I am in balance, close your eyes, see how
Right.
balanced you are.
Right.
And allow
Absolutely.
yourself to be challenged, because so often we are almost afraid to fail.
Yeah, I
When
definitely want to talk about that. Yeah.
Shall we go ahead and talk about that, or do we need to finish up?
Well, I wanted to say one thing that
Yeah.
I really appreciated that a teacher of mine said many, many years ago was, if it looks to you like I never lose center, which is never losing balance, that's an illusion. I just come back to center more quickly than you do.
Oh, that is so great. I mean, so on point.
Right. And so we can do this in all realms of our lives. Of look at somebody else, and it's that classic, don't compare your insides to someone else's outsides. Right. Yeah, it can look like on the outside like they're all balanced, but in fact they are doing the same process you are. They might just be doing it in little smaller bites or coming back to center more quickly.
I love that idea of coming back to center more quickly, because with that, the way that we do that is through learned experiences, through practice.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
so we have to keep practicing our balance, whether that's, physical or mental or emotional, so that we can keep coming back to our center, and not be stuck, or not, I won't even want to say stuck, but out there in flux and waving and falling all over the place and our emotions on a pendulum swing, but we can come back to center more quickly.
Yeah. And part of the reason that I always begin with the body, the sensation in the body, is that this allows us to discern and to know what it feels like to be in center and to know what it feels like to be out of center. And so if somebody says to you, Lynsie, I want you to take on this project, and you have a feeling about it, you can say, oh, yeah, that feels centered and aligned with me. Or, whoa, I don't know about that. And it gives us an opportunity to check in and see, is this an opportunity for me to stretch my abilities? Or is this something that I'm not ready for, or the time isn't right, or right? It's like the ability to sense what it feels like in and out of balance is a skill that we can apply to everything every decision we make, whether it's what do I want to have for lunch, or do I want to make this career move or date this person, right? All
Yeah.
of those things. And it all comes back to this sensation of centering ourselves and being comfortable with both in and out of center.
Yeah, and starting from the body, it allows you to, it's much easier. I mean, there are challenges with starting with the body, but it is much easier to start with it because we're so connected to it. It's something we can actually feel, and it's not as subtle. And so starting with the body, it feels like to me what you're saying is that we can use that as leverage to know when we're out of balance in other areas of our life. And know, and when we can feel into our bodies, when we're physically out of balance, then we can become attuned when we're out, what it feels like in our body when we're out of emotional balance, because it's going to send a signal to the body. And then we can also feel when we're out of balance in our thoughts, because that's going to send a signal to the body. And because we've become so attuned to those sensations of when we're physically out of balance, we can relate it to the other aspects as well. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's exactly right. And I think that this sort of segues into awareness, and that you were talking about. And I have a very specific thing that I'm talking about. And I think that in a lot of ways we are trained not to be aware, to be focused on our thoughts and our mental capacity rather than what information we're getting from our whole system. So, awareness is key to the practice of balance and the embodiment that we can take into all parts of our lives.
And so, that idea that, we really do put our logical and analytical mind up on a pedestal and think, but it's really, we actually become stronger and people when we actually start with the body and then move into the heart, and then let just the mind be in service of the information that we're receiving from the body and from the heart.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so before we go to our next break, can you give us just a short definition of what awareness actually is? And we throw this term around a lot, but I think it would be worthwhile actually defining it for people.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing. And I actually, I kind of prefer the term embodied awareness over mindfulness or just awareness, in that I want to encourage us to think of this as a systemic, holistic skill. And it includes our five senses. of smell and touch and taste and hearing and sight. And did I miss one? I think that's 5. Yeah. But, but really tuning into those in a present way, but also the 6th and 7th senses of proprioception. Proprioception is our body's sense of itself in space, absolutely integral to balance, and interoception, which is our sensation of what is happening inside the body. And so all 7 senses awake and present. We're present to them. That to me is what embodied awareness is.
I love that you bring up that there are actually 7 senses and not just 5. And because when we forget about the other 2, we're missing out on a vast array of sensations and information that we can tap into.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah. And so we are at time to go to our first break, but we will definitely pick this back up when we come back. So during this break, don't go anywhere. Maybe balance on one foot, eyes open or closed, and just feel how messy balance can be. And also just challenge yourself and notice that when that need of perfectionism needs to come up, and have a little play with it. And we'll be back after this short break.
All right, we're all clear.
Okay, thanks, Gabe. How do you feel about that first segment?
Oh, good.
Good. Okay.
How about you?
I
Anything
feel
you want to
good.
tweak?
Yeah. It's always so easy to talk to you, Susan. Always has such great things to say. So when we come back, do you want to come back to the 7 senses and delve into that a little bit more? Or would you like to jump into?
I would love to expand a little bit on proprioception and interoception.
Yes, I think that's great.
I think I think that my point about the 5 senses is mostly just that we tend to tune them out, that we're culturalized to tune them out, and not really invest in them, like pay attention, right?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people don't know about proprioception in particular, and it is, literally we could not move without it.
No.
And so, let alone balance, but so yeah, I'd love to go to that, and then we can, and then we can go from there.
And I feel like hardly anyone's ever heard of interoception. I mean, like you don't hear that. I hear
Right.
proprioception much more frequently than.
Yeah, and
Coming back in about 15, you guys.
Okay.
yeah, and there's some great stuff there too, so we can talk about both.
Okay.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically, and me, your host, Lynsie McKeown. And today I'm joined with Susan McCulley, and we've been having an amazing discussion on what balance is and what balance isn't. And we left off with talking about the 7 senses, not the 5, but the 7. And so I want to ask Susan to explain a little bit more about these other 2 senses that you might not be so familiar with.
Yeah. Man, I love talking about this, in that it is something that our culture tends to discount, and yet it is so accessible, and so paying attention, investing in our experience. The 5 senses that we're familiar with are all great grounding tools, great ways of orienting ourselves, whether it is taking a sip of water, or looking around your space, whether it is touch and feeling yourself in the world. The five senses that we're all familiar with are fantastic tools. The two other senses, proprioception and interoception, are ones that we don't hear about so much, but we've all had experiences with them. Proprioception is the body's way of measuring where it is in space, and it is fascinating. So some examples of times where you may have noticed your proprioception and didn't know that that's what it was is if you've ever walked up a set of stairs in the night and you thought there was an extra stair that wasn't there, and you ever done this and you like take a big step and like, whoa, that's your body feeling where it's been, where it is, and where it's going. It's forecasting where it's going to go. Similarly, have you ever done this? You like come up to a box and you think it's full of books, but it's actually full of pillows. And you go to pick it up and you go, whoop, and it like flies off the floor because your body has forecasted how much force to use to lift what you think is a heavy weight.
It's so cool.
Isn't it cool? I mean,
Cool.
yeah. And so this is happening all the time. And so wherever you are, listeners, you can do this wherever you are, is you can just take a moment and feel how far away the walls are in the space that you're in, right? Including the ceiling, the floor, and the walls behind you, right? If you've ever been at a dance party or a place where it's sort of, there's lots of people moving around. I love doing this in grocery stores, is to really turn on my proprioception and notice that my body can sense where there's that big stack of cereal and where there's an old guy who is looking down near the floor, and my body is sensing how much space I have to navigate that aisle, right?
I can always sense when someone is too close.
Yes. Yeah.
Without even seeing them, all of a sudden I can feel someone's in my field.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so really playing with the balance practice invites us to strengthen this proprioceptive ability. And I highly recommend looking up, there are some very powerful videos of people who have, because of a brain injury, lost their proprioception. It's very rare, but what it does is it tells us how much we rely on it. That someone who has lost their proprioception has no ability to move in any kind of smooth way,
Wow.
and is often completely unable to move.
So that's why I was getting ready to ask you. So why would we want to strengthen our proprioception?
Yeah. Well, it is absolutely essential for balance, and balance is part of what we're doing all the time. Every time we take a step and stand, or even just create some kind of postural alignment, we're using proprioception to gauge where to place our limbs, right? And how much strength to use, like in the empty box example, right? If I am standing on a curb, I'm going to need more core strength to keep me upright than if I'm on a big open floor. And it increases our grace and our fluidity, our ability to, as you were talking about, like as I sense somebody behind me, or I'm aware of the space around me, it allows me to move more easily through everything I do. And that is all enhanced when we practice balance.
Yeah, super important as we age because we do take a lot of this for granted, when we're younger. But it becomes even more important as we age to really make sure that we have this strong proprioceptive skill.
Yeah. And it is something I you mentioned that I am very engaged with women who are over 50 and really looking at the physical, societal issues around aging as a woman. And in all of my years of teaching, one of the things that I notice as women get older is that they tend to be more anxious about balance. And so instead of practicing balance, they tend to narrow what they're doing,
Mm,
right? And say, okay, my balance isn't good. So that means that I'm going to use a walker. I'm going to not sit on the floor. I am going to narrow what I'm doing instead of expand.
yeah.
And what I invite is to be exactly where your body is and to, like we were talking about, just take small, safe risks to stretch your capacity to balance.
Yes, always stretching your capacity. Otherwise, you start to like if you don't take those small, yet safe risks, then you're actually going to shrink your ability to stay balanced or be able to use even your senses in the way that we're meant to use them. And then also it just takes the flavor and the richness out of life as well. If we're always kind of in this fear state
Right.
or we're afraid of, you know, failing in some way, even if we have, are not at an age where we're afraid of balance, it can come in then as well.
Yeah. 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 And um, I think that um, part of the hesitancy of people to practice balance is this um, either or black and white perfectionist
Hmm.
thing, like okay, I just don't do that well, and so I don't want to do something that I can't do perfectly.
I have people say this all the time about yoga because I teach yoga and that, oh, I can't come to yoga because I'm not flexible enough or I don't have good balance. And I'm like, well, that's why you come. This is
And to
why
me,
you
that's like
come.
this. I love it when people say that to me. It's like, oh, like I'm not a good mover. I can't move. I'm like, that's like a hungry person saying, I can't eat lunch because I'm hungry.
I know. Crazy. It's crazy. And it's a practice. You come in and you practice and then you improve on that and let it continue to be that process and that it's not an end result.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
I'd love to talk a little bit about, how this fear of failure and perfectionism are so intertwined in our society and how we can use this idea of balance being a process to kind of unravel some of that belief system and the habits around that we have around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our culture sets up failure as equivalent to death,
Hmm.
really, and that we can tend to avoid it at all costs. And in fact, failure is how we learn. I mean, it is how we learn, it's how we grow, and it's essential. And if you're not failing, if you're not wobbling and bobbling and a little bit messy in some way, it's similar to what we were talking about with proprioception. You're atrophying, you're
Yeah.
shrinking in. And so what I really love to play with is flirting with failure, is seeing failure as a friend, as an ally in our own process, our growth process, whether it is a physical practice like yoga or movement or um, any skill that we want to develop. And so taking small, safe risks is not just okay. I mean, it is needed. And and so yeah, I think that I think that we use perfectionism, we use this avoidance of failure as a protective mechanism. We use it to defend against judgment or criticism or exclusion in some way. And man, I totally get that. I mean, I just
Not perfect. I won't even take the risk. And
exactly. And I don't want to look silly. Yeah, I used to teach classes in the before time, in a big health center in my city, and we did a survey, and the most common reason that people did not take classes, number one, was I'm afraid of looking silly.
okay, I want to raise my hand right now for people that can't see me. I'm telling you, I'm raising my hand right now because that was me. I remember, you're a Nia instructor, and I remember, I don't know, 20 years ago almost, watching, like looking in on a Nia class. I'm like, there is no way in heck I am going to go in there and do what they're doing, because I don't even know what they're doing, but it looks really weird.
Yeah.
And I don't want to look silly
Yeah.
because I was so rigid around my in needing to be so perfect, and my movements and the way I looked. And now I just, recently went to a women's retreat where we were doing some conscious movement and conscious dance, which I had never done before. And I'm all over the place now. Like, I'm 50 and I'm like, I don't give a crap anymore. I
Yeah.
just want to feel my body and experience how it's moving in a new way, because I don't want to miss out on this beautiful body and how it can move, because one day it's not going to be able to move in all these crazy movements and on the floor and off the floor and up in the air, and just enjoy it.
Yeah. And there's so much that you said there. Oh my goodness. Just have to take a little second, because I want to say, first of all, I too am raising my hand for those of you who can't see me. The first Nia class I took was in 1998, I think. And a friend of mine had been inviting me for 2 years to go with her to class. And it was like, I was literally kicking and screaming. I think I was like, no, I don't want to. Exactly. It looks too weird. And I was afraid about it. And I think that one of the key factors for me was that first class I took, there were no mirrors in the room.
Oh,
and that was a
so
gift.
important.
That was a gift, because I got to have the experience exactly what you're talking about. I got to move in all of these different ways and experience all these different sensations. It was like stumbling into this buffet of extraordinary food that I'd never had before, and being able to savor it, even if I like dripped down my chin, or like I didn't quite know how to eat that fruit exactly, right? So I get the desire to look good. And the truth is that these bodies that we are residing in, no matter how old you are, no matter how able you are, they are incredible. And as long as you are breathing, there's more right with you than is wrong with you. And your body is doing amazing things. And so this is the opportunity. Flirting with failure is an opportunity to kind of taste all of it, sample all of it.
Yeah.
And I would also say that avoiding those situations, those new situations, those situations that may feel awkward or slightly uncomfortable, guarantees that your body's not going to be able to keep moving that way as you get older.
Exactly.
Guarantees it.
Yeah. And so keep playing with different movements and celebrating the body. And, through this conversation, we've talked about, the flirting with failure, and, and using all the 7 senses, and doing that, it actually brings awareness to how incredible the body is. And I think for women, this is so important, because we can start to see our bodies in awe instead of self-criticism and judgment. We can be in appreciation for the body instead of, or feeling like our bodies are not what we want them to be or should be. And I absolutely love this idea of just being like, okay, this is my body. It's amazing. It's wonderful. Look at all the amazing things it can continue to do if I just take those little, I don't want to even say calculated. I just want to say risk, those risks that aren't going to, get you injured, but stretch you so that you can expand and experience the beauty of this life and not regret it later on when you're stiff and in your little, using your walker because
Yeah.
at 20 years before you needed to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I can't, time always goes so quickly with you, Susan, but we're already up to our second break. So this will be the last break of the show, but again, don't go anywhere because we're going to delve even more into this conversation around balance and flirting with failure and how this balance can actually start to like flirting with the failure and our physical balance can actually help us become more resilient in our minds and our hearts, as well as the rest of our life. So how does the physical balance actually help us find balance in the other areas of our lives when we come back?
Yes.
All right, we're all clear.
You're so good. That was exactly where I wanted to go next. And I was like, can I interrupt and tell her where we're going to go next? And then you just said exactly. You're
Just
so
send me
good.
the thought. I'll catch it.
That's great. That segment felt really good.
Yeah, I think these topics are just so important for, women just to explore their bodies and really be in appreciation of it. Cause I think that, especially as we age, we get so fearful around what's happening with the body and how it is,
Yeah. I think that what my observation is that we layer on top of all of the fat phobia and the appearance centered stuff that we have from the time we're babies practically, to then layering on like I'm afraid of being incontinent, I'm afraid of not being able to live independently, I'm afraid of not being able to have sex, I'm all of these
Mhm.
things that gets layered on top of. And plus my belly's too round and my skin's too.
Sorry to interrupt. We're coming back in about 15.
Okay. Thank you, Gabe.
Succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically. And we are here today with Susan McCulley, and we've been having an incredible conversation on the topic of balance and what it is, what it isn't, how perfectionism and failure keep us from expanding into our full capacity. And on this next segment, we're really excited to talk about how we can use our awareness of physical balance to help us develop more balance in our minds and our hearts. Okay, Susan.
Yes.
We talked a little bit
Yes.
about this during the break, but I'm just going to hand it over to you. How can we use this, our seven senses, our bodies, to bring more awareness and balance into our life?
Yeah. Well, I want to start with one of the most human and most basic movements that we do, which is walking. And you, when we were playing around early in the show about if you're standing on one foot, look down at your foot and see how the muscles are engaging and letting go and releasing, and your ankle is constantly adjusting. Our feet and ankles are designed to walk and move and stand on soft, uneven surfaces, right? They're designed to walk on grass and rocks and roots and sand and mud and think about just for a second what kinds of surfaces you've walked on today.
Yeah.
The kinds of surfaces that most of us walk on almost exclusively are hard and flat.
Mhm.
And what this does is that it trains our genius bodies that are designed to be responsive, alive, awake, and balancing, adjusting all the time. It kind of puts them to sleep with these flat, hard surfaces that are sort of constantly predictable, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I always recommend for people who are interested in really attuning to their own body's balance is to play with walking on different kinds of surfaces. Walk on hiking trails and walk in the grass, walk barefoot. This is the other thing, is the shoes that most of us wear are almost like a cast. They're like a block, and they are preventing your body from sensing the information of the surface that it's walking on. Okay, so walking barefoot, or I love what they sometimes call minimal shoes, which are shoes that are soft, that allow your feet to receive this information. And this is huge, not just for the development of the physical muscles and connective tissue in the body to allow us to stay balanced, but it's also that attunement to the surface that we're walking on. Your whole body is getting information from the soles of your feet. There are 30,000 nerve endings in each foot, and all of those nerve endings are telling your body that there's something uneven here. There's something there's a little rock there. There's right, and so this is part of the practice to me, is to notice the kinds of surfaces that we're walking on and consciously make a choice to walk on uneven surfaces. Now, this may sound like it has nothing to do with what physical balance has connection to our minds and our lives, our hearts, right? But this is the exact practice that allows us to be resilient, to be responsive, right? So as our bodies get comfortable with soft, uneven surfaces, our bodies know what it feels like to be in alignment, and our bodies know what it feels like to be out of alignment.
Yes.
And so when my partner says, "You want to go out to dinner tonight?" And I feel in my body, no, I want to put on my soft things and I want to eat the leftovers in my refrigerator and watch television or whatever it is, right? If it feels out of alignment, I won't override that sensation when in relationship, in this example, right? I have the capacity to adjust and say, oh, no, that doesn't feel
feel
like
right.
the right thing, right?
Thank you
And
so much for
so,
bringing this back to like a really practical example. I mean, how we have these 30,000 nerve endings and each foot are giving us all this information. And if we really allow ourselves to become adept at understanding the information that's coming in, it will help us in very practical ways in our life, making day-to-day decisions so that we're not overextending ourselves, which women, how many women out there are overextending themselves and
right.
self-sacrificing because they're not, and this might be because you're not really fully connected to the information that's coming in and being aware of whether that's really truly what is best for you in that moment,
Yeah.
which inevitably becomes what's best for your partner or for your family
Yes.
as well.
That's right. That's right. Everyone is served when we are in alignment with ourselves and moving from a centered place. And absolutely, the people in our lives, but I would even extrapolate further that the more people are who are walking through the world in a balanced, centered way, the better off the whole collective is, not just the people,
Absolutely.
the creatures, and the planet itself. And I think that if we look at our bigger problems, whether it's personal, right, the things that are not working in our lives, or in a community, in a family, in a company, or in the planet as a whole, we can almost always come back to, there has been an alignment that we've overridden. And so my whole point with starting with these flat surfaces is that by kind of artificially making the surfaces that we walk on hard and flat, right? The earth was not designed that way, but
No,
we come in and we make it that way. We are overriding the intrinsic wisdom of our bodies and ourselves.
it's as if we're like, we're overriding our intrinsic wisdom and we're creating these surfaces that make it feel safer for us, again, so that we don't have to fail, that it becomes easier for us to match a certain mold almost. And so if we allow ourselves just to be connected, and walking on the earth has so many benefits besides just enhancing our proprioception and our getting all that information through our feet. But, by doing that, we can just really connect to ourselves, connect to the earth, which is incredibly important. And therefore, we can filter all this information so that we can start to connect better with other people. And also that will extrapolate out into the world. So we're not becoming these reactionary beings, or we're actually being able to really think about what we're saying or doing, because we're actually really understanding where we are in our bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really well said. And I think that this comes back to this seventh sense of interoception, which
I'm
is
so glad you came back to that.
which is our ability to sense ourselves from the inside out,
Mm,
right? And again, we all have experience with this. We know what this feels like. This is our sense of basic things like thirsty, or I'm hungry, I have to go to the bathroom, or something like that. But also on the emotional plane, things like, am I excited or afraid? Right? On the surface of it, those internal feelings can feel similar, but we
very
know the
similar.
difference. We
Mhm.
do. And this is part of this of balance practice, is this discernment of what information am I receiving, and can I respond to it rather than react to it, as you were saying, rather than being reactionary. Can I know, like, oh, actually, I'm a little bit excited and a little bit anxious, right? And so that allows me to make choices based on that. So yeah, that is a huge part of what allows us to move more gracefully through the world in all realms: body, mind, emotions, spirit, connection with others relationally,
I mean, can you
socially.
imagine if the majority of the population were doing that, walking gracefully and connected with more compassion and grace and ease
Yes.
in the world? I
Yes.
mean, it's just, I know it sounds a little utopic, but it's not out of our reach if we start to just incorporate very simple practices back in.
Yeah.
And you actually have a course that is amazing, because it will actually help you come back into balance. And do you want to just tell us the name of the
Yeah.
course and where we can find it?
Yeah, I'm so excited and proud of this course. This is it's a course on Insight Timer, which is a free meditation app, which in general I highly recommend. There are thousands of wonderful meditations, including some from Lynsie. And but this course is called Building Balance in Your Body and Your Life. And it's in 4 different sections. Each one is a short lesson, and it includes very practical applications, and it also includes meditation and rest.
Yes.
So, because that's essential too. And so you can, I think you have links to that, but you
Yes,
can
I'll
find
put
that on Insight Timer. And
And you can also find all of this on your website, I'm assuming,
yes,
as well, which is
yes.
www.susanmcculley.com. And that's SusanMcCulley.com. So, Susan, I can't tell you how much I enjoy having conversation with you. And we had such a long list of questions we wanted to cover today, and we didn't cover all of them. But I am hoping that you'll come back on the show and we can dive deeper into this and maybe some other topics, because you are just such a wealth of information and inspiration. I love you so much. And I hope the listeners today have fallen in love with you as well. And please check out her course on Insight Timer, and start to create some balance, not just in your body, but feeling how that body balance can help be the first step to creating balance in your heart and your mind. And with that, I just want to thank all the listeners today and your dedication to showing up here and listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically and creating more balance in your life. And just know that we're here every Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 9 a.m. Pacific. And next week,
7.
we're going to have, did I say that wrong?
Yeah, you said 9.
Oh, it's 7. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Susan. It's 7 p.m. Pacific and 10 a.m. Eastern. And with that, my friends, I will thank you so much for being here, and join us next week, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes or Apple Podcast. I am Lynsie McKeown, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Much love.
All right, good job. We're all clear.
Thank you, Gabe, for your help today. I
Thanks,
appreciate you.
Gabe. Oh my
No
gosh,
problem.
sister.
Talk to you guys next week.
Okay.
So fun.
So fun. And so now that what we're going to do is I'm just going to see if I can open up our Facebook and see if there's anyone here. I don't see. I'm going to stop the recording first, and then we'll go to the Facebook group.